I have an awesome guest. She's a friend of mine. Her name is Nicole Schur, and she's going to help us understand some things that are happening in the Portland area and here in Oregon at multiple levels. But I first want to say something about the State of the Union address. Go Joe Biden! Yay! Go Joe Biden! Yay! Yay! He brought up a lot of good stuff. The funny thing, I saw Madison Cawthorn. I don't know how interested you are in that level of politics, but Madison Cawthorn and Ted Cruz were looking really guilty. I have no idea what that was about, but I can only imagine. Other than that, Joe Biden called for, the normal drug price negotiations with Medicare, lowering the cost of insulin, child care, paying your people a living wage and reducing the cost of your materials instead of cutting people's wages. That was fabulous. He received so many standing ovations tonight. He called for banning advertising to children. He called for a lot of things, a lot of initiatives that progressives really want. There's a couple of things he could have done better or, gone a little further on. However, where Ukraine is involved or concerned, Joe Biden has actually called for banning Russian airplanes going over U.S. airspace. Yay! So now the whole world is coming together against Putin, as it should be. Yeah. And the Ukrainians are standing up. Unfortunately, the Russians did blow out the TV tower in Kyiv. So that's a little bit of an issue, like a major issue for communications, but it sounds like they are pulling through. They are good people, and their leader is fabulous. And I always mess up his name, so I'm not going to say it. I am going to turn things over to Nicole, and she is going to help us understand the state of the homeless situation as we've been able to see it. It's still not great. There are things happening in Portland. In 2020, our voters here in Oregon passed Metro's tax of 1% for select portions of our population to help with homeless services and universal pre-K. That's huge. I'm not sure where we stand with that, but Nicole's going to help us understand a little better about what's happening in Multnomah County. So I leave that to you.
It has been very challenging. Multnomah County, I'm a native Oregonian. I've lived here all my life, and I have never seen my state. I mean, you almost want to cry with what has happened here. I have never seen my state look like this. It's horrible. And I've heard, I know a lot of times what happens is when you do any sort of legislation, there's more arguing over little bits and pieces than actually getting the help that needs to go there. And but there are things happening, but it's happening on other levels than our government. Like I know, I came from Portland State, and I know that there's an instructor out there that is doing a conflict resolution model and I've heard that he's been doing some things and taking it to the street and how do we work with the homeless. But that's not our government. And so there are individuals doing amazing things, but it's not necessarily coming from our government. So I haven't seen anything from what I've seen I've seen them make a bigger mess in some aspects. And I'm not real happy. That's personally. I had this year, and again, I've lived in Oregon all my life. I saw my first drive-by. I've never seen a drive-by. And I just was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And so that was really upsetting. And I was like, what happened here? Now, I'm not going to run in fear. I will stand up and I will do it in a way that's not stupid. I mean, I'm going to do it in a way that's wise and be a part of the community and figure out how can I do that. And I'll learn those conflict resolution skills because I think that's very vital. And I may do it in another way, like where I feel like I'm called to do. But I feel that we need to be looking at how do we unite? I was talking to someone recently, and they said one thing about Portland is there's a lot of amazing people, and we really know how to unite together. So I think what a lot of it is we need to figure out a way, instead of maybe taxing, how can it get back in the hands of the people so that we can unite to create it together as a community. As people together, where can we help these people?
So that brings up something that happened, I want to say in 2020-ish. There were campers outside on the park, outside of Laurelhurst Park.
Yeah.
And this comes straight into your want for the community to help these people get back on the road to being healthy and understand not everybody in the homeless population is a drug addict or mentally ill. Larger portions of our homeless population are families now because they can no longer afford to rent in the Portland area.
Yeah.
And with rents being, luckily, thanks to Chloe Daly and a few of the other people who mandated strict regulations against landlords for just raising people's rent 300% and kicking them out because they couldn't afford it. Luckily, there are some provisions, but rent is still, oh my goodness, outrageous. So on that note, the community coming together to help people, the Laurelhurst people were complaining that, oh my goodness, people were living in tents outside of Laurelhurst Park instead of offering a hand to help. If Nicole were the mayor of Portland, how would Nicole encourage community members to lend a hand?
Well, I think part of it is we have been too much of a society that is either focused more on the individual or more focused on the community. And so we have to learn how to be balanced in both. And that's been part of the problem. If people are in survival mode, they can't give. And if people we've got to learn that we are a community. And how do we work together as a community? And I think a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid. When they see people as homeless, they see them, a lot of times people, when they're homeless, people are afraid of them. They don't understand what's gonna happen here. I've talked to some people who have been homeless. I've been on committees with people who have been homeless and heard their stories. And when you hear their stories, it is so powerful. And I think a lot of times we don't understand marginalization. And people in those in many situations, especially upper class people that haven't had the kind of trauma that a lot of people that end up in those situations.
Lee is complaining that their bills are exponentially higher because of the impact this person is leaving. Instead of allowing them to continue doing that, maybe offer them some sort of guidance into helping that person get on their feet. And that's less expensive in the long run. If you give a little to help this person get on their feet, they're no longer a burden on you, and you've done something good for the community.
Well, it's kind of like I heard something really powerful one time, and it was an abortion thing where someone said, we go after women for abortion, but we never go after men.
Exactly.
We don't say, why don't we have mass vasectomies? And so it's that kind of push and pull thing. We're saying we don't want homeless people because they create all this trash and all this mess that we have to clean up, and then they steal this, and then they're in survival mode.
Yeah.
And so
and survival mode's no fun.
And no fun. And so what we're hearing is you're feeling invalidated, they're feeling invalidated. So how can we listen to both of them, both sides? And what happens is when people are feeling silenced, that's the thing. Both sides are feeling like they're not hearing their voice. They're feeling silenced. And there's a difference between being silenced and silent. Silent is when you're like, I'm going to sit here and be a quiet observer. Silenced is when you feel like you don't have a voice.
But you can't make somebody feel silenced if they refuse to participate.
What do you mean?
If they refuse to participate, if all they're going to do is argue about or
Exactly.
complain about the garbage and the increase in their water bill instead of actively doing something to help.
Yeah. And that's why
They're
we have to tax.
refusing to get their voice out there.
And that's why we have to have these taxes in. That's why we have to have higher property taxes, because people are not helping. And that's sad.
That's it's a sad representation of what Portland has become.
Yeah. But there are people out there that are helping, and there are people out there in the community. And that's where, and I know people who are that, and I know people who are the opposite. And if we had the opposite, where if we had a system where we could say, if you are willing to give of your time and help, maybe there's less taxes. And if you're willing not to do that, then you're going to get more taxes.
So I've always beat on the people with the means, right?
Yeah.
Because the people with the means have to be willing to help those less fortunate.
Yeah.
Because if they're not willing to help, they have no room to be mad, because they're perpetuating that issue. On the other side, we need to make it known to people who live on the streets that, I'm sorry, some of these behaviors are just wrong, right? As someone who lived on the streets a number of times, and by myself, walking down Division in Southeast Portland at 2 o'clock in the morning, carrying my bag. I didn't leave garbage everywhere. I'd rather go sleep in a doorway, which I've done, instead of in a tent on the side of the freeway. But there's mental illness issues too that need to be placed. So instead of beating on the people with means, we also need to make it known to the people in survival mode that, yes, we understand you're in survival mode. There is help. You can't have a voice if you refuse to go get help.
A lot of it is we get we don't understand healing in our society. There's a lot of shattering in people, and it gets handed down generation after generation. And so we aren't necessarily, we don't talk about the modalities that help heal, like EMDR, or that's a very good one. I mean, that's more of a mainstream one.
Can you elaborate, please?
EMDR is rapid eye movement, and it's a modality that can help with trauma base. EFT is one that can help, and they can help with those. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to cure anything, but they have found that they've used EFT with vets, and it's helped with like the PTSD, because a lot of the trauma that you're dealing with on the streets is PTSD related.
Yes.
And a lot of homelessness and chronic. So what they're finding, and I've talked with some people in Home Forward, which Home Forward is our housing in Oregon. Is what they've found is people who are homeless that get into Home Forward end up getting back on the streets. So what they're doing now is they are trying to figure out a way to stop that from happening.
Right.
Because they don't know how to. Once you get in that pattern of I've been traumatized, you go back to the trauma. If you listen to like the statistics of domestic violence, women go back and find that next partner. Or it takes them I think it's 7 times. Is it 7 times?
Like
yeah.
Or they need intensive counseling not to do that again.
Yeah, and so what happens is when that happens, it's the same thing. So you go back to those patterns. So they're trying to figure out a way to make sure that they don't get re-traumatized. And I mean, because I've talked to some, so how do we handle the disabilities so this doesn't happen and people can keep their housing? And because in the past they've had some staff or they've had some things happen and people have lost this. And there are people with disabilities, and disabilities is a wide range. I mean, and this is the other thing our society does not understand. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many people I talk to who are so uninformed about disabilities. They think disabilities are people like in a wheelchair or autism.
Yeah, no.
And it's not. I have a learning disability, and people do not think that I have a disability. And I've been called a liar. I've been told that it's not fair to other students to get a reasonable accommodation. I've been picked on in the workplace. And actually, people with disabilities have a 2 to 3 times higher unemployment rate because of it. And our agencies that are supposed to help us with that do not know how to help us with that, which makes it worse. And if you're struggling with that concept, There are, I think Disability Scoop is a magazine that talks and has talked about articles about, this is just going on. And it's, if they don't know how to help us, the agencies that are supposed to help us get jobs and keep jobs a lot of times, how are we supposed to do, how is our employment supposed to do that?
Right.
On top of that, our Social Security is set up where people are in such poverty, and you cannot, I think it's like $1,300, you can't make more than $1,300 a month with working. So if you make, like, let's say, $600 a month on your Social Security, can't make more than $1,300 a month, or you lose your Social Security.
Yeah, that's barely.
Seeing people out there with disabilities that have talents and
Yep.
abilities.
Yep.
And I like to say, I talked with a professor once that gave me a really amazing thing. And I'll take a step back in a second. Capabilities within context, or abilities within context. And what I like to say is, if you expect me to drive a vehicle for my job, and it's a packaging job, I'm going to need some things. I'm going to need the keys to the vehicle, and I'm going to need a dolly. If you don't give me those things, I don't have the capability to do my job.
Right.
A reasonable accommodation is like giving a person the ability to do their job. I'm not asking for anything different or anything special treatment. And a lot of times people will say, you're asking for special treatment. No, I'm asking for equity. And I've actually talked to people with like minority and her minority status things, and they've said the same thing to them. I've heard stories like, the only reason you're in this program is because you're a minority. I've heard people say that to me even to this day in states that are on the West Coast.
Oh my goodness.
And to millennials. And I just go, are you kidding me? So equity still needs to happen. And I'm going to take it a step back. Part of the reason we're dealing with some of these issues is because we still aren't dealing with the basic needs in the workplace regarding what humans need. Our laws are just not set up for equity for people in general. When you have the law, I know that in Oregon, it's in 4 hours you get a 10-minute break within that 4. Yeah. And if you're going to do like a phone job, this is a good example. Right now we're talking. I'm drinking water. So in 4 hours, I'm on the phone. I'm going to drink a lot of water to talk. Yeah. I'm not supposed to go to the bathroom except during my break. They highly discourage that. Is that human?
No.
No. So you just put me in a situation. So if I can't have that, so if we're having those kinds of issues, this is part of the reason we're having retention issues. How is
micromanagement?
Yeah, but
seriously.
But how are we going to be able to give people with disabilities reasonable accommodations if we can't even do the basic human needs?
Right. Exactly. So what would you do to change HR at that level? What provisions, what policies would you put in place? So you're CEO of JFK company, what type of ideas would you have for entrepreneurs or CEOs to help their employees have a more equitable environment?
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things. I would first have you do the research, because the research shows that when there's a couple of things. First, research shows that when you have multiple cultures, multiple different kinds of genders and different races and different cultures, it's not just you're going to have more innovation because you're having multiple different ideas, multiple different personalities. It's like you're creating this place of creativity because you're not just a single white person or a single white female or a single white male. And when you have a female, a male, a millennial, a trans, a Gen X, a baby boomer, and you have all these, you have someone from the United States, you have someone from, maybe Ukraine, you have someone from, you have all these, you have innovation happening, you have people with disabilities, it creates, and then you start working, okay, how can we create this happiness? What can we do to create play? Play creates innovation because you're in joy. And so that's what I would say is, what do you really want out of your environment? What do you want out of your workplace? Do you want to create a place where you're going to create more wealth, innovation, and by doing that, how are you going to do that? So let's do the research to show what companies have been the most successful and why. What have they put in place? And I know that there were IT companies there for a while that were like, oh God, we need employees, so we're going to have a slide in our office.
Yeah, they had many different. I was at Real Networks for a while in the early 2000s-ish, 2006. And at Real in Seattle, they had couches, they had a napping room. Mm-hmm. They had quite a few. They had some free food, mm-hmm. Some snacks, and a lot of your tech companies, this is how they run. Mm-hmm. And it's the tech companies, honestly, though some of the people aren't the greatest, but the innovation in tech companies is outrageous. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Outrageous. And that's because they take a lot of the things that you're talking about for real, and they do it. They have these committees, these mm-hmm. Equity committees and kindness and stuff like that. Yeah.
They even have in some of the tech companies, they even have a menstruation day for women.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
That's new.
Yeah, because they know it's such an intensity that they're starting to offer menstruation day for women, which I think is awesome. I think we should.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous.
That's awesome. So it's halfway. I want to let you all know that you are watching us live on March 1st, 2022 at Willamette Falls Media Center. If you want to have a great time, we are in Studio A right now, and Studio A, we have 3 cameras, and they have much more than that, and microphones, and they have a podcast studio over here. They have a commercial kitchen. They have Studio B, which is a smaller studio. It's probably a quarter of this size. They have editing suites. You can volunteer. You can be a producer. You can have your own fun little show. You can do, like, this show's been around. I've only been around on this show for about 3, 4, 5 years.
That's because you're so young.
This show has actually been around for 11 years, I believe. It started with Caleb, and then Caleb unfortunately had to step away and asked Moses, and Moses had me come in as co-host, and now Moses is needing me to step in as host for a little while, and I couldn't be more honored. You can call us and talk about how you feel about equity in the workplace, homeless people. Are they, what do you feel about the situation down 205 over by Powell and Division? And Foster? It's really, I'm hoping for some improvement over there. 503-650-0198 is our phone number, and you should, if you're not watching us live in Portland, you should be watching us live on YouTube. Marvin informed me that he was able to get the stream moving, so we are up. My phone kept going off, so I'm not watching for comments. I do apologize. So call me. Call and ask Nicole questions. I want to know more about the needs languages, so you should tell me about that.
Okay, well, the needs languages so what I noticed in our society is a lot of times we're really disconnected. And we also noticed that, I noticed that we have personality models out there that are not communicating with each other. And when we don't know how to communicate ourselves, we are not going to be able to know how to communicate with others, and we aren't going to be balanced. And this is part of the problem. We're not going to be aware of what other people need. And so I started looking at, what's going on? And in my master's, which I say is, I did my master's in industrial organizational psychology. I say you need a degree to say it or spell it. So I'm going to say IO, because it's just too many words, just too many words. I don't know why do they give so many words for a college degree like that? It's like,
no idea. Like, my background is in tech, so when she told me IO, I said in, out. She's like, kind of.
I was in and out. I did it in 6 months, so I was in and out. So I said, okay, well, nobody's going to go up and say, hi, I'm a sanguine. Let's get to know each other.
Right.
And And then I would look at sometimes, and I'm not dating right now, but I would look at the dating profiles and people would put these letters or numbers on there and they'd say this, and I go, okay, well, that's great. I know what you are, but I would tell you who I am, but we're going to have to go online and look each other up and maybe read a whole book.
Right, to figure it out.
And that's not going to
Myers
tell.
and Briggs.
Yeah, that's not going to tell me how we communicate. And so I said, okay, let's look at how these words look. What are some easy ways to break this up? So there's 4: important, right, control, and value. And I thought, okay, well, if I say the word important, you kind of got an idea. And if I say that person seems like they're important, or they like to act like they're important, well, you're going to kind of know how they communicate. That person likes to be right. And they kind of use a lot of right language. And they think they're right.
What is right language?
Oh, right language is good, bad, right, wrong.
Black and white.
More black and white, but they can have gray. But when they believe something's right, it's right. And when they believe something's wrong, it's wrong. And they stick to it.
So how would somebody as an important speak? How can you tag that?
Oh, they're goals. They are about goals, and they are for the prize, and they are very focused. I mean, they are driven all the way. And they are so, I mean, it's like sometimes it's like, I mean, it can be quite challenging sometimes to you know, I mean, they walk into a room. Important people are kind of more like this. They'll walk into a room, and all of a sudden the music's playing. The music will stop, and they'll say something. They're like, "Oh, darn, I did it again." They don't mean to. It's like their subconscious mind just picks up that the music's going to stop right at this moment, and it's going to draw attention to them. So it's those kinds of things. And a right person can also be very focused if they feel it's the right thing to do. So right is it's about, this is the right thing to do, so I'm gonna go do this. So it's more about that. So that's how they can look the same.
The other ones were
control.
Control. Okay,
Control is about the environment. They want their environment a certain way. That for them to feel safe, their environment needs to be a certain way. But don't you ever say to a control person, unless they've got important really attached to it, they have got a goal. They will look at you and they'll go, "Don't you dare tell me I have a goal." I don't like that word. I've been in the room with control people that have no importance and no right, and they go, "Don't you dare tell me I have a goal." I do not like that word. I will not do a goal. I can't comprehend that word.
What is their substitute?
Steps.
Oh, steps. Okay.
Say, hey, would you like? Let's outline. Let's create some steps for you to. And they're like, oh yeah, I can do steps.
Okay, and the fourth one again
is value.
Value. That's right.
Value is cost benefit.
Okay.
And that's about, is this going to benefit me more? Or is this going to cost me more? We tend to be like the Jungle Book birds. From Jungle Book. Mm-hmm. Like, remember the ones that, what do you want tonight? I don't know. What do you want tonight? I don't know. What do you want? Now don't start that again.
Right.
Because if we see no benefit to it, or we see no cost to it, we just don't want to make a decision.
Right.
And if your control isn't involved, or your important isn't involved, or your right isn't involved with the right value, because we're 2 out of the 4. So if you're an important value and you are so focused on doing what's important with your value, you're important in value, you're focused on that goal. When you're sitting down relaxed and your brain's not focused on anything, you're just like, I don't have a decision to make. I can't find an importance in this. I don't know what to do. You know, they're just like that. And so it gets very fascinating, but what's neat about this is great for your parenting.
Right.
This is great for, if we learn how to communicate with each other, we're not wounding each other. We now know why certain people bother us, and when we work with those, like, I'm an important value. I don't work well with right control because we don't have the same language. But if I have a connector in the room that has a value or an important, I can work with a right control. Or if I have a love language that's the same, I can work with them. Or if I have something else that's in common. But this can help me because now I know how to communicate. I can communicate better in a workplace. There's other things that can help me in situations that can help me navigate the situation. This can help me when I'm working with children, in parenting or schools, in teaching. It can help me in relationships. And that's where I think, if you bring it back to what we're dealing with now, it could help bridge the gap with some of the stuff going on with the homeless and the communities.
That's where I was going to take that. If you could take out any of the four and put them together in a formula and use that to help the homeless or people with disabilities, in which, you can't even really say which two it would be. It would have to be, could you put people in groups? Like they do for drug testing and stuff, like a placebo group so this group has a leader, right, in the community, and it has a leader from the homeless community and the disability community. And these three people work together on a plan to help their environment, help their community, right? And then over here, this is the placebo group. Mm-hmm. In this group, you have the leaders from the same ones, but you're using the needs languages.
It can help you with connection. I can give you an example. I worked with someone who was supposed to be helping me with some of the stuff with my disability. And they were a right control, and I'm an important value. And I basically questioned their right, and they went after me. And they were so nasty with me that and there were other people in the room too. And I was there were all three of us were there was me, four of us. There was four of us. By the time we were done dealing with that person, we were all just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they said that. It drained all of us. And everyone was connecting to that person but me, because 2 out of the 4 of us had control and 1 had right. So they were all connecting with the right control. I was the only one who wasn't. And I was directly working with them. They were just a part of the team, and so who helps the individual, it is going to matter, because if they're not connecting, it's going to play a factor on how well that person heals.
Is there a plan in the future to create an assessment for these different levels of the community in order to, so say we take Portland, even mm-hmm. Brooklyn neighborhood, mm-hmm. okay? Take Brooklyn neighborhood, and you have a leader in each one of these communities, and they take this assessment, mm-hmm. right? And so the assessment delivers results in telling you the personality types of each of these. Mm-hmm. If you could use that assessment to tell them, okay, this is how the best way for you guys to communicate. And I think you'll go leaps and bounds in your proven directions or in your desired directions if you follow this plan.
There are some things being put in the motion. I don't know when and how, but I am working on things to put in motion to help people learn how to communicate with this model, and go even farther than that, because I think we need to learn how to have equitable communication. This isn't just about disabilities. This is about gender and race.
It's across the
line.
Yes.
Because we do not know how to have equitable communication. We do not understand what is okay to say to each other and what is not. And I'm just as to blame as other people, because I'm Gen X. I'll give an example.
Yeah, me too.
I struggle with they and them. And it's not that I mean to, it's that when I was growing up, when you would say they and them in a sentence, you were told, no, it's a he or she.
Exactly.
And so the millennials are great at it, but we were told you were almost getting in trouble for saying that. And it was like, okay, so you have to understand, and we're really trying, I know a lot of us are really trying, and I'm going back to that because I would prefer, when I was a kid, I prefer saying they and them. And so how do we navigate this and work together? And I think a lot of it is we have to learn to create a place where we work together to create equitable language together. This isn't just a one-person thing.
What about the communities, our populations in these communities who refuse to even budge and be desirous of connecting with somebody outside of their clique, right? So you have people in our disparate communities that refuse to acknowledge someone as trans or refuse to acknowledge their pronouns. I don't use pronouns, but that's just me. I am more than accepting in using someone else's pronouns, even if it's they and them. I don't care. I just want to know so I don't offend you.
Yeah.
You know? But there are people out there who flat refuse. It's like their gender is as it was and blah, blah, blah. And as a kid, I always wondered if I should be a boy because I played sports. I was the only girl hanging out. I was climbing trees and out running a skateboard and bikes and everything, you know. But I decided, no, I guess I'm a girl and just was that way, right? But that's me. I mean, there's kids now who honestly believe, and there's been a recent increase in people who transition that are sad that they transitioned and want to transition back. I've been hearing some of that on TikTok. But anyway, but that's neither here nor there. The person decided to transition. They want their pronouns to be this way. I think we should respect them. So how do you get people in the community who are selfish and don't want to do that to convince that, you know, we're a community of people and just be nice?
I don't think you can do it outside of a workplace, but I think what you can do is I heard an amazing TED Talk about a woman who talked about outside of the workplace, you can do whatever you want, but inside of the workplace, your employer is responsible for your behavior and can get sued. And I loved her TED Talk. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be some liability that if you want to be that way, then you better be prepared for the liability of it.
Right.
I think that just really needs to be the case. Is we need to come back to a society of that there needs to be consequences to some degree for our actions. However, at the same time,
yes, please.
At the same time, we need to also have grace because we need to understand that I had an incident happen recently where you have to also understand disability never tops race, but race never tops disability. So how do you also have that navigation? Because some people don't have those etiquettes and don't have the comprehension. So that becomes a fine line of, you know, and it may be prefacing, but then again, you have to also understand you cannot force someone to disclose certain things. So then what you do is if you are a person who's conservative and you believe a certain way, then don't put yourself in situations that you're going to be a problem in those communities. Then don't go to a gay bar if you're anti-LGBTQ. Don't go to where LGBTQ people hang out.
But for men, you know, I mean, I don't agree with the people, the conservatives, who look down on this. But on the other hand, you're saying don't go to these places, but more and more the people of I used to always call it alternative lifestyles are becoming more fluid in our community, right? They are more places. They're at the grocery store, they're in the library, they're in the schools, they're everywhere. So suck it up and deal with it is what I would say, but we can't.
But I mean, you can't tell people are a certain thing unless they're like with their person. What I was saying is I'm talking about where like you're knowing where people are. I was talking about a general like function where everyone was coming together like a rainbow function. I was talking about that. I was saying don't go to that. You know, in a community where you're at the grocery store, go a different direction. Turn your back. Don't look. Don't participate. Just walk away.
Right.
You don't have to walk up. Just turn around and go another way.
But why can't they just open their brain and understand that not everybody is like them?
Some people are
and accept it.
They're not able to. They don't. Well, they're not able to. And I cannot force people to change. And I mean, I just can't.
Right. So how would Nicole actually has written 3 books?
3 booklets, yes.
3 booklets, and I still need to read mine. But her first one was on dating and how the needs languages can help in the dating experience, and the second one is parenting. Do you want to tell me about your story about you and your son with your parenting book, or?
Oh my gosh!
That was wonderful. I think it's a good story.
My son's when he was 3 years old, he could say the word consequences, and I thought he was so smart. I was like, oh, this kid's so smart. He can say the word consequences. What a brilliant child. And then I came across this model, and I thought, oh, God, he's not as brilliant as I thought. He's a right value. I went, oh, he is smart, but consequences is a right word. A right is the result of a choice. So that, for me, as an important value, I would never have picked up the word consequences at 3. That's what I mean by it's a language.
That's interesting.
So yeah. So that's where it became really fascinating. And sometimes I need help because we're so close as a family. I now can have conversations. And we get along really well because we meet in value, but even more so, I know when I overstep my bounds and I say something and they come back, my son comes back and says, you aren't saying this right to me. I can go back, go, yeah, okay, you're right, but
that level of communication, oh my goodness, awesome. What some parents wouldn't give for that.
Yeah.
I mean, just even on the kid too, the kids would appreciate that too, being able to come to the parent and say, I can't accept it that way. Is there another way we can talk about this?
Yeah.
And I think more parents would fall on the floor than anything.
Well, I was speaking important to him, and actually he's with a roommate that's the same as him, a right value. And I said, if I talk to you like this, I want you to go out and have a happy life. You'd look at me with a deer in headlights, wouldn't you? She goes, yeah. I said, but if I said, I want you to have a good life, you'd look at me and go, yeah, I could have a good life. And it was like, yep, because it's a language, and our brains interpret language. And we all interpret things differently. And so this is why this is so powerful, and it's so simple. And and it's not about judging people. I want to make this really clear. We all need right people. We need right people because right people can be our justice people. From what I see, Biden has a lot of right in him, and he is going to do everything he can to do the right thing for this country. And I so appreciate. I mean, I know a lot of people there are people that struggle, but I mean, it's just I see that on him, and we need our control people. And you'll hear people go, oh, controlling people. We need them because we need that. People don't want to be out of control, but we need that environment, and we need people who are important because they can push us. And we need that value. We need that value to come in that's more sensitive, that helps us to bring that benefit or show us that's going to cost too much. We need all 4, but we need it to be in balance so that we can, when we have that balance and we're aware of ourselves, then we can create that belonging, which is man's lowest hierarchy of needs talks that's one of the highest things.
Yep.
So when we find balance within ourselves, we can create that belonging.
Yeah.
And then we learn how to communicate. Because again, I can't communicate important to certain people, and if I learned how to communicate to even people who are opposite of me, oh my gosh, it can be amazing. Yeah. And I know people who have used this in the workplace with the opposite people of them, and they've actually have spoken that opposite language, and those other people have warmed up to them, and they don't even know it because they haven't said, hey, I'm using the needs language here. So this is a model you can use just to communicate in general.
You've actually helped me tremendously with Johnny and understanding a little bit more of how to communicate in a way that is understood and help me understand behaviors. Mm-hmm. and the reason why certain things happen the way they do.
Yeah.
So that's huge. Thank you for that. Definitely.
Oh, you're
That's
welcome.
been that totally when I started when you started elaborating a little bit more on the needs languages, and because at first when you first started explaining this to me, I'm like, okay, I don't understand. She had to explain it to me probably 3 or 4 different times, and I finally went, oh, okay, so I completely understand this. And I started, kind of looking at the world and interactions with people a little bit differently, and oh my goodness, you guys need to talk to Nicole. You really do. And her name is Nicole Shir. Nicole Shir, Shir. And you can find her books on Amazon under the needs languages. You want to go ahead and give them the titles?
It's the needs languages, bringing balance and belonging in dating. And the needs languages bring balance and belonging in parenting. And the needs language bring balance and belonging in romantic relationships. Ooh.
But they are fascinating. The work that she does is fascinating. She's helped me learn a ton about interacting with others, and I can't thank you enough. I'm going to be testing that out hopefully very soon, outside of Johnny. But yeah, I've been my kids and stuff like that. I can definitely tell the difference. How has this program impacted your life?
It's been awesome because I can now look at, like, when I'm with my partner, I can say, you know what? I can actually say I'm needing to be important in this situation, or I'm being so driven, I'm needing certain things. And they can actually look at me and say, you know what? I'm feeling unsafe in my control. And, they looked at me one time and said, you've embarrassed me. And I said, I probably did, my importance, because you're control and you don't want your environment to be disturbed, and my importance went, here I am.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a place where you feel shame, you're angry. You could actually say, this is what I need, and there's no embarrassment. I mean, there was embarrassment in that situation, but there's not. You're saying what you need. You're saying what your needs are, and you can compromise.
That is so helpful. And you have actually helped me understand myself more and kind of how I am and why my behaviors impact the people in my life. So in your outside world, when you're talking to people in your groups and stuff, what's the impact you've seen on that? Are you able to identify in the group who is what?
You can. Sometimes there are things that, like, there will be things that will influence you. Like, sometimes people will think I'm control, but it's because I take charge. And there'll be some, like, I've been watching dating shows sometimes, and I'll go, and sometimes it may take you a little while, but the language will always, the patterns will always show, and they'll go, this. And as the patterns show, you will figure people out. So that's very helpful, but we've seen people figure out who their ideal person is, and they're able to then manifest that. Once you know, then you can put the other things you want and need in a person, and then it's able to line up. You're able to communicate. Workplace is so amazing. You know who. Can you imagine not putting the wrong people together on a team?
That's huge, and that's what Myers-Briggs was supposed to do. And I was working as a contractor for a local company, and they were actively, what is your Myers-Briggs initials? And if you did not know, they had you go and do it, right? And the reason why they did that was because they believed, like, I'm an introvert, judging and stuff like that, right? Because I'm very much, it may not seem like it, but I am an introvert.
Yeah.
I'm very much an introvert. But they thought that by understanding that section of your personality and then another person's section of theirs, so like the extrovert judging or whatever, there's components in those where we would get along because of give and take. So they used that in that capacity, but they didn't actively put people in places where it helped. They just wanted to know.
Yeah.
Well, so they could know how to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, and this, the thing with it is introvert and extrovert. I've met so many people who say I'm both. I'm both because a value person needs that quiet time to be quiet, and an important person is like, here I am. And
Right.
so sometimes you're both. And there's some
Right,
people
some-
who
some
are
people are.
total extroverts,
Yeah.
and some people who are total introverts.
Right, and that's where I find it, like, after this show and I start to go home, I am just drained, right? And after an event and I go home, I'm just drained because those sort of things. But Johnny, on the other hand, for those who don't know, Johnny's my husband and like the closest person to me. So he is a serious extrovert.
Is he a peacock?
Like, he needs the people. Yeah, he needs to be out with people and doing things and having fun and yeah, no.
He's a peacock?
Yeah, sort of. I think so.
Then he's probably an IR, important right.
He is.
Peacocks
Yeah,
are usually
he is.
important rights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, those are peacocks. Yeah, those are your real flamboyant, more, you can usually tell an important right pretty quickly. They're usually your peacocks.
Yeah, and he's actually, that's about where I put him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was having a problem with the value or right. I wasn't sure, but I had important.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm control value, I believe. So I don't know, you could tell me, but value, I think.
It's
But
really
yeah.
about you discovering, because
Yeah.
it's I don't ever like to tell people. It's what you feel you are. So
I'm getting the signal that
We're getting a high
almost
five.
done. We're getting a high five. Oh, I have 5 minutes. Like, I don't, though, because he's going to cut me off at 59. Nobody called tonight, but that's okay. I've enjoyed having our conversation with Nicole. She's wonderful and fabulous, awesome friend. I've known Nicole for, 8 years now, almost?
Yeah.
Almost 8 years. I met her when I was teaching social media management at Free Geek.
Yeah.
And she's just, I have seen this lady grow so much over the years.
Yeah.
And she's just fabulous. And she's really neat to talk to. Her books are wonderful. And you got to meet her.
Well, and that's what happens when you give people with disabilities the right context. You give them the car keys, like I said in the beginning, with the dolly, they will flourish. But that's not just people with disabilities, that's anybody. That really is. And that it doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what age you are, what nationality you are. When you take away the car keys and you don't give them the dolly, they're not going to flourish. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's with the needs languages, whether it's a person with disabilities, whether it's race, whether it's gender, that's really what it boils down to. And that's what's gonna solve our homeless problem. Is we've got to find the right car keys to give people. We've got to find the right dolly, and that's where we have to come together as a community. If we're going to complain, and I'm not going to say the B word, but that's basically what I was going to say. We're going to sit there and do all that kind of stuff. We are not going to be able to solve the problem. That, misery loves company. I hate that expression because I don't want to be company with misery. That doesn't make any sense to me. I want to be company with joy. I want to be company with happiness. Nobody ever wants to be company with misery.
No.
So complaining never solves the problem. So why do we keep complaining? Let's find the car keys to get us our packages and make sure that the dolly's there. Everybody wants their package. Everybody wants to have, not everybody, but most people want to have our city clean.
Yeah.
Most people want to have our police be good police officers. Most people want our mental health to be want people to get their mental health up where we're not having the mental health crisis. We want people to be flourishing. We want people to be successful. If you're successful, I'm successful. We are all different pieces of the puzzle. This is one of my favorite sayings. I have a whole bunch of Nicoleisms. We are all a piece of the puzzle. Different pieces go different places. And equity is giving everybody, letting people be their own unique piece so they fit in the puzzle, so we make the beautiful picture we all are.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Now, I was under the impression equity meant offering the same people the same opportunity across the board. Or is it opportunity to find out who they are and where they best fit, which is more of what you are speaking of?
I think what equity does is it gives people that ability to be able to be that puzzle piece so that they can be a part of the community. So that they have the same, so they have that same ability. You know, it's giving them that ability. So
I have to close and say thank you everybody for watching. I'm sorry nobody called. Willamette Falls Media Center is where you can be a show producer, you can do your video editing, you can volunteer, you can find out more at wfmcstudios.org and talk to Melody or Shelly or whoever answers the phone. I think Rachel actually is the receptionist now. Thank you again. We will see you next month. If it's not me, it'll be Moses. And I appreciate you and your viewing our show tonight.
thank you for having me, Sherry.
Thank you, Nicole. You could be anywhere and you chose to be here. Nicole Shear is fabulous.
Thank you.
And I know I said your name wrong again. He said that he's going to start rolling music at 8:59, so
We got like 3 seconds.
I'm still getting used to doing this hosting thing. This is the first time I've hosted a show myself. Well, actually, this is the second time, but this is the first show.
He's got the music on.